Welcome to the Dr. Warren Gage podcast. I want to begin another series looking at an exposition of Revelation 21 and 22. I made the comment that the millennium, as it's understood, is only described in 6 verses in chapter 20. And by the widest imagination, it's 1,000 years, solar years. You can tack onto that, perhaps some do, a 7-year tribulation. But even if we're talking about 1,007 years, is very much insignificant compared to the eternal city, which is the goal of all of the faithful. We live as pilgrims in the earth, as the author of Hebrews says. This is not our home. We're looking for the eternal city. That is how you identify the people of faith through all the ages. They're not, this period of 1,000 years, which is not a position that's held by most of the world and through most of the centuries of the Christian faith. It's a relatively recent idea, not even quite 200 years old. The idea of a millennium is older, but the way that it's understood, that millennium is understood in America particularly, has been very different. And I'm not interested in that. That's another discussion. What I want to focus on is what is often not focused on, but should be, and that's what is the promise of the new heavens and the new earth. What does the new Jerusalem look like? Where are we going to be for eternity? So the idea of the millennium has in some ways hijacked the vision of the people of God. And I want to try to recapture that, because we need that in times of turmoil in this world and trouble. It's the hope that we derive from seeing what God has in store for us that can immensely enrich our lives and deepen our hope and our love for Christ when we think of all the things that He's providing for us. In a world where there is no longer any sin or cycles of sin. I remember the millennium, as I was taught it, ends with a great revolt against Christ's rule. And then there's more judgments and divisions. And I think the vision of the heavenly city is one that will really transform us and give us rest and peace, particularly in a time of turmoil that seems to be increasing in our own community here, but as we remind ourselves that we're only pilgrims. So I want to look at an exposition of Revelation 21 and 22, and this will take a while. There's so much richness in this material. So John writes, he says, "Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, had gone away, and there is no longer any sea," he throws in. Now, what does that mean? It seems to me that the key word in this context is the word new. He saw a new earth and a new heaven. What is the new there? What does new mean? I think we read past words in Scripture so often because we think we understand them almost intuitively, but there's a lot of richness in that expression. Peter uses that language to describe the eternal state in 2 Peter 3. He describes the old heavens and earth that were created in Genesis 1 that perished in the days of Noah, and coming out of the universal flood of the days of Noah, which was a universal judgment of water to purify the sin of the earth, God created the present heavens and earth, the present cosmic order, as Peter describes it. And this age will end again in a repetition of days like it was in the days of Noah, as Jesus said. And then God will bring a cataclysmic fire upon the world, a universal judgment of fire. And everything that's in the world will be burned up. And Peter draws the moral implications of that, everything that we chase and think we need to have, a career, a family, property, money, wealth, fame, all of that will be burned up. And so he says, since all of this is to be destroyed, what should be our manner of lives? Well, the implication, obviously, is that we should live for the new heavens and the new earth, which he describes as coming out of that cosmic fire when Jesus returns as a thief. And always in the Gospels, that refers to the second coming. So there will be a new heavens and a new earth when Christ returns. And so I want to look at that. Well, what does the new mean there? The cosmic order is the same. There will be a heavens and there will be an earth, but they will be completely renewed. And that seems to be the primary sense of new in the Bible. It's not so much new as opposed to old, although it includes that. We tend to think of new as being a measure of time, as something that appears in time. In the Bible, the word new primarily means something that has been reborn or refashioned or reframed or reconstituted, has been renewed. That's the major idea. It's something that's redeemed. I was just thinking about it briefly, and a number of passages came to mind. Paul says, if any man be in Christ, he is a new creation. Well, that means he's been redeemed. He goes on to say, old things that were identified with the prior life without Christ have passed away. And the emblem of that is our baptism, when we begin life anew. And coming up out of the waters is an emblem of resurrection. We begin a new quality of life. All things then have been made new. And so we become children of a new covenant. Well, what is the new covenant? It's an arrangement that we have of salvation that God has offered to us. It's a covenant that saves and delivers not just from temporal loss or ruin, but from eternal loss and ruin. So we partake of a new covenant. We become like we follow after the new Adam. Christ is the second man, the new Adam. He becomes our head. And he too came forth from death, as we know. And his body was healed and renewed in that sense. We are given a new heart, the Bible says, and we're to pursue a renewed mind. It speaks to our nature. We're following after the new Adam, and so we are growing after the fashion. The idea of new doesn't mean static. It means a process is initiated that goes on and on forever in the case of the context we're looking to. We're given a new commandment. John speaks of that specifically and elaborately in his second general epistle, 2 John. But we're given a new commandment, and he says it's a new commandment. Christ said at the foot washing in John 13, a new commandment I give you, that you love one another. But that's not, as John says, the new commandment is really the old commandment. That's the commandment we learned from the very beginning when Cain posed his question, am I my brother's keeper? And he was a fratricide when he asks that. And the answer to that is obvious. It's yes, we are, because that new commandment expresses the fact that we should love our brothers. And so Christ is renewing it in the sense that he's giving us a new ability to fulfill that commandment through a renewed mind and a new heart. We're promised a new wine that will be given to the people of God, which speaks of joy, a different kind of joy, not the joy that we have from the wine of earth, but the wine of the covenant that speaks of peace with God, peace with man, peace with self, or what the Hebrews called shalom, that beautiful word. It speaks of peace with God, first of all, peace with our neighbor, and peace with self. Our souls are no longer cleaved in two as the world is. So we have a new joy, and we are on a pilgrimage to find the New Jerusalem, which is our topic. It's a renewed Jerusalem, but it's different. It comes down from heaven to earth. It's not built up like Babel from earth to heaven, but it comes down. It's a gracious gift. And then it is found in the new heavens and the new earth, which is renewed. So I think all of that is implied when he says, I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no more sea. Why would he say that? He's going to say there's no more sea, but he will also tell us there's no more night, no more darkness. And the first creation, after God made the world, it was a world that could not sustain life. There was no light until the first day of creation, and it was all covered by a briny sea. As the way God made it, the Spirit moved over the darkness and the deep. And so that creation was renewed in its original creation, as Peter talks about in 2 Peter 3. God brought forth a new, from that original creation, he brought forth the old heavens and earth, as Peter designates them, a cosmic order that could sustain life. But this will be a new one, and so there's no longer any sea. The sea represents that which doesn't sustain life. It doesn't mean there can't be a lake system or things of that sort, but there's no sea. The sea in the Bible is associated with tumult and storms and death and jeopardy for the sailor, whose only hope is the fixity of the North Star, the mariner star. So he too, in a way, is looking to that star. Plato uses the image of the certain professions that have life and death power. So you would think of a general or a statesman. The illustration he uses is the pilot, and by that he means a ship pilot, not an airline pilot, but the pilot on the sea. And they're looking for some way to fix themselves and find themselves and know what direction in which to go, because the sea is a place of jeopardy. And they're sea monsters, whatever those are. Leviathan dwells in the sea. Behemoth is more of a land monster or animal, can have monstrous dimensions. But Leviathan is like the twisting serpent in the sea, whether it's a whale or a shark or whatever it is, but the sea is a place of fear. When it says there is no longer any sea, it doesn't mean that there's no longer water, bodies of water, but they no longer bring fear to the heart of man, because the seas help sustain life as well as the land. And there's no longer any darkness, he says, and that's the darkness of fear. The things of the night that frighten us, the night in which men do their evil deeds, that will be removed. So there will be nothing that causes fear or trepidation to the people of God. And he says, in the holy city, and this is what he sees. He said, I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, and again it's renewed, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God. That direction is significant, I think. Paul describes in Galatians 4 the Jerusalem above, which he says, which is our mother. And in the ancient world, as we've talked about, when they looked at the sky, they knew where heaven was. It was the north, and the North Star that doesn't move, and therefore is eternal, because you measure the movement of time by the movement of heavenly bodies. And that appears to the naked eye, the polar star, Polaris, appears not to move at all. And so that's the still point. That's where it's a timeless place. And so it's from that place that Jerusalem comes down to earth. Paul contrasts the earthly Jerusalem with the heavenly Jerusalem. That the 2 points together draw a line, and that becomes the axis of the world, the axis mundi, the still point. And the Bible speaks of Jerusalem as the center or the navel of the earth. And so anyway, that Jerusalem, but it's the heavenly Jerusalem where our home is. That's the city that everybody has been looking to, beginning with Abel. So the city did not originate, as I've said, with Cain. Abel was counted among the number in Hebrews 11 that was looking for the heavenly city. Well, what did he know of the heavenly city? Clearly, what did he know of sacrifice? all of that was explained to him. And so Cain's city is the fraud. Cain's city is the image of the heavenly city without God. But this heavenly city will come down from heaven to earth. And why is that significant? I think it's significant in a number of ways. The first thing is that it's not of human manufacture. We can't build it. We can't make it. So the people of God in the Bible do not build cities. From the very beginning, they inherit cities. The only cities they build are the Pithom and Ramses, the treasure cities of Pharaoh. The cities on earth that they build are built in bondage. But when they enter into Canaan, God says, I've given you cities that were already built. In other words, it's a token of the heavenly city that he has in store for them, the one that is not of their manufacture. That means it's all of grace. Jerusalem will come down, fully fashioned and formed. Its builder and architect is Christ. And his imagination will fit that out. That's the place that he's gone to prepare for us. And so that will come down from heaven to earth. And you can't help but fail. You can't help but remember that the contrast with that is the city of Babel, the first city of the post-Diluvians that was intended to be a cosmopolis because all the people were of one language and they were of one tribe. And they decided to build a city whose tower would reach into the heavens, pierce the clouds, and challenge God himself. And so Moses tells us because it was an alluvial plain, it wasn't a mountain, they made an artificial mountain. And the zigguratу in Mesopotamia are probably reflections of that. They're staged pyramids like the original pyramid in Egypt, the step pyramid of Djoser. But in any case, at Saqqara, and Saqqara in Egypt is the city of the dead, named after Sokar, the god of the dead. But the root of the word that was used to describe the towers in Mesopotamia is very similar. It's Saqqar. And we get from that ziggurat. So there's got to be some connection with that, because the Nile is also an alluvial plain, and they built artificial mountains, stair steps to heaven. So man's desire, like the Babel builders, was to build a city and a tower. And so they don't have bricks, so they take mud and they make bricks and bake it. And then they don't have mortar, so they use bitumen, pitch, which again is plentiful in that region. And so you think this city, they're building it as a tower, perhaps to be able to escape if God sent another flood. But they're building this city and this tower, and the whole human family is engaged in building this titanic tower into the heavens. And so to mock it, Moses anthropologically describes God as, it's like he's almost like a Mr. Magoo. He can't see. What is that the children of men are up to? Let us go down to see what this tower is that they're building, to challenge the heights of heaven. And so metaphorically, he has to go down to see. Of course, God is omniscient. He knows all things. He knows the intents of their heart and the wickedness that they're doing because they're disobeying his command, which was to scatter. But when you think of the primitive material out of which man is building his city, sun-dried brick and pitch, it's not a particularly attractive scene. And I think that too is part of the taunt that's involved in the language of Babel. Let us build this city and make for ourselves a great name and all this kind of stuff. And so the contrast to that is the city that Christ is building in heaven to bring to earth. It's very clearly a contrast with the city, the zigguratу of the Babel builders. We do know that they had the ziggurats that are over there are not as beautiful as they once were. We know that they had different levels of glazed brick that gave it colors. And so we know a number of them. We know that there was the azure blue. We know that there was red. There was yellow. There was green. There was black. There's one color that has not been deciphered. We don't know what it was, but obviously it was part of a multicolored tower that would have been built. And these were not primitives, so I'm sure they had some beauty to them. But again, it's glaze, it's artificial, it's patina, it's outside, it's not integral. When the city of heaven comes down that Christ has built, its foundations are precious jewels. And the colors are vivid. The amethyst, the purple amethyst, the ruby, the red ruby, the hunter green emerald, the azure blue, sea-colored turquoise, the amber topaz. All of these are the stones, the precious stones, precious and semi-precious stones that constitute the city that Christ is building. And all of those stones will reflect his light in a prism of glorious colors, and precious jewels and precious stones, gates of pearl and streets of like crystalline glass and gold. So I think the contrast is to be noted there. It's very significant. So I saw the city, holy Jerusalem, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God. And then he says, having been prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And that takes us into another lesson that we'll look at soon. Thank you for listening. Please be sure to like and subscribe to my channel if this has been useful to you or intriguing. To learn more, you can visit my webpage, drwarrengage.com, or find me on my Patreon account, patreon.com/Dr. Warren Gage. I hope you'll join me next time on the Dr. Warren Gage podcast. Thank you.